We hear a lot about, the dream of working overseas, all the opportunities, but what about coming back? What happens then?
Yeah, that's often the less discussed part of the journey, isn't it?
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a situation, a really compelling one that kind of flips some assumptions on their head.
Okay.
We got this story sourced from a News 18 article about a software developer. 9 years working in the U.S., very skilled. And now they're returning to India, mostly for family reasons. But the job search back home, it's proving, unexpectedly tough.
Right, and this isn't just theoretical. It's based on the developer's own account shared on Reddit, which gives us this really ground level view.
Yeah.
It lets us see the nitty gritty of a big career move like this.
So our mission here for this deep dive is to really get into the specifics of what this person went through. And then maybe step back and see what it tells us more broadly about these kinds of transitions, especially in tech, which moves so fast.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, we're essentially taking this specific case, pulling it apart together to become really well informed on these particular challenges and maybe what they signal.
Okay, let's get into the details then. This developer, 9 years of work experience, all in the U.S.
That's significant time.
And they have a master's degree from the University of Michigan. That's a great school.
Definitely well regarded.
Background is in full stack development. For listeners maybe not deep in tech, that means they can handle both the front end, what you see, and the back end systems.
Right, whole application.
Key skills listed: Python, Django, and the REST framework for it, JavaScript, Vue.js, which is a front end thing, and Postgres for databases.
So a pretty common solid tech stack.
Yeah, built web apps, data pipelines, moving data around efficiently, even data visualizations.
You seem like a well-rounded profile.
And their salary expectation back in India, around 30 to 35 lakh per year.
Okay.
So you look at all that. Sounds like a strong candidate, right? On paper, at least.
It certainly presents as, a profile you'd assume would be highly competitive. International experience, good education, relevant skills.
Theoretically.
Theoretically, yes. It should make them quite attractive. But as we're finding out, the reality may be a bit different.
Yeah, because here's the twist. Despite that resume, they've been job hunting in India for 6 months.
6 months is a decent amount of time to search.
And in that time, only one single interview call.
Yeah.
It's just one.
Wow, okay.
And that was just a preliminary recruiter screening, which didn't go anywhere. Rejection.
So not even a technical round?
Nope. Just one initial chat in half a year. They were apparently quite surprised, understandably, and posted on Reddit about how hard it was just to get that first call.
That's stark. A real contrast to what you might expect.
Go.
It immediately makes you wonder, okay, is there a mismatch maybe in expectations or how that U.S. experience is valued locally or a skills gap?
Yeah.
The fact that they aren't even getting initial calls suggests something fundamental isn't quite clicking with what companies are scanning for.
Exactly. And the developer actually flagged a potential reason themselves.
Oh, interesting. What did they think?
They pointed to a possible lack of deep hands-on experience with cloud computing. Yeah. AWS, Azure, GCP.
The big platforms, yeah.
And also tools like Docker and Kubernetes, containerization, orchestration, that whole area.
Very in-demand stuff right now.
And message queues for system communication. They noticed these things popping up constantly in Indian job descriptions. And sort of assumed, maybe correctly, that many senior developers in India already have these skills pretty well covered.
That's a crucial observation.
They basically acknowledge, look, this feels like a major disadvantage for me right now.
That self-awareness is really important, and it just highlights how fast tech changes, doesn't it?
For sure.
Skills that were maybe top tier a few years back might now just be, expected, foundational. And this whole cloud-native paradigm is just huge now. Yeah.
So their observation about those skills being all over Indian job postings, it really points to a shift in what's considered core for senior roles there.
And adding another layer here, something not strictly about tech skills, the green card situation.
Right, that was mentioned.
Apparently, they were facing a really long wait for a U.S. green card. Something like 15 years.
15, wow, that's incredibly long.
Yeah. And that long wait was a big factor, maybe the main one, in deciding to return to India. They needed to be there for aging parents, one with a disability.
Okay, so it wasn't purely a career move then. Strong family reasons pulling them back.
Exactly. Which makes the job search struggle even more complex, you know.
Absolutely. It adds that whole personal dimension. Career choices, they're almost never just about the job, are they? They're tangled up with life, family, and that green card timeline basically forced the issue, making the job hunt in India a necessity, not just an option. So given all this, it makes sense they reached out on Reddit looking for advice.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's going on.
And the feedback they got was, well, varied. Some interesting perspectives came out.
Like what?
One person commented about, quote, cutthroat competition in India. Potentially tough work-life balance, too. And they suggested having connections, contacts is often really important there.
That paints a pretty intense picture of the market.
It does.
And while, it's just one comment online, you do hear those themes. High competition, demanding culture, discussed quite a bit around the Indian IT scene. It's a perspective to keep in mind.
Definitely. Someone else brought up an interesting angle. They asked if maybe the developer's work history, if it was mostly based in universities in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Like academic research or university IT?
Yeah, the commenter was wondering if that kind of background might be viewed, well, differently in India compared to experience in, say, commercial product companies.
That's actually a really sharp point. Different work environments can be valued differently.
Right.
Experience mainly in academia, maybe it doesn't always translate perfectly, or at least isn't perceived to translate to the pace or demands of, like, a fast-moving commercial tech company in India. Whether that's fair or not is another question, but it could be a perception issue.
Yeah, could be. On the more positive side, someone suggested looking at jobs in colleges in India.
Leveraging that potential university background.
Right. Saying it might be a good fit, though they did caution that academic salaries might be lower than in the main IT industry.
A trade-off to consider.
And another practical suggestion. Try targeting companies that have a big presence in both India and the U.S.
Ah, the multinational route.
Yeah, with the idea of maybe joining and then potentially looking for an internal transfer down the line. Or just that they might value the U.S. experience more.
Both of those sound like, sensible alternative strategies. The college route plays to a potential strength, and the multinational angle might bridge that gap in perception or specific local skill demands. It could offer a smoother landing.
So the developers taking all this in the feedback, their own assessment of the skill gap.
Trying to form a plan.
Exactly. And their current thinking is to spend the next 6 months or so deliberately learning those key technologies.
Cloud, Docker, Kubernetes, message queues.
Yep. Get those skills up to scratch before really pushing hard on the job search again. And they actually asked the Reddit community if this sounded like a good strategy.
That's a very proactive step. Shows they're not just waiting, but trying to address the perceived gap head on. Investing time in learning those high-demand skills, it really could significantly boost their profile for the Indian market. It's strategic. It shows commitment to staying current.
So when we look at this whole story, what are the bigger takeaways for people listening?
Well, first off, I think it really highlights that even if you're experienced, even with international credentials, returning home isn't always a simple plug-and-play situation.
Yeah, it's not automatic.
Especially in a global field like tech. There can be real challenges. It kind of busts that myth that U.S. experience is this golden ticket everywhere automatically. There are local nuances, specific tech trends, and different markets, different ways experience is valued, like we saw here.
And it just hammers home that point about continuous learning in tech, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Massively. Yeah. The landscape just shifts constantly. You can't rest on your laurels.
No matter how senior you are.
Exactly. Staying current with the big shifts, like cloud-native development, it's vital. This developer's experience really throws that into sharp relief, especially in the context of the Indian market's apparent demands.
And finally, those Reddit comments, while just anecdotes, they do give us that little window into the perception of the Indian tech scene, right?
Yeah, the perception of intensity, competition, maybe different work culture expectations.
But it's crucial, like you said, remember, these are just individual viewpoints online, not necessarily the whole picture of a massive industry.
Precisely. We can't overgeneralize from a few comments, but those themes, competition, work-life balance questions, they are part of the conversation around that market and part of the environment this developer is trying to navigate.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we have this experienced developer, U.S. background, strong skills on paper.
Yep.
Facing real difficulties getting traction in the Indian job market. likely due, at least in part, to a perceived gap in newer cloud-focused tech skills. Their plan now: invest time in upskilling to bridge that gap.
Seems like a logical next step based on the feedback and their own observations.
The whole thing just really underscores that moving between job markets, even with great credentials, can be way more complex than you might assume.
It really can, and that core question the developer raised is upskilling the right focus now. It's relevant for almost anyone in tech, anywhere. How do you stay competitive when things change so fast?
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, which leads to maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. Is this developer's experience just, a one-off? Or could it hint at a bigger trend? Are certain tech markets becoming hyper-focused on very specific, cutting-edge skills, maybe even valuing them over broader international experience sometimes?
That's a really interesting question.
But what assumptions do we make, maybe unconsciously, about how easily skills and experience from one country just transfer neatly to another? Definitely something to think about in your own career journey.
If you found this video valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and set the bell icon to all for notifications. Feel free to leave a respectful comment. Vulgar or inappropriate comments will be blocked. See you in the next video.